afternoon, HBR, and welcome to week 7. I'm Jessica Sontag, and this is Royally Resilient. Joined with me today is Beth Ferguson, our school district psychologist, Mallory Wassman, our elementary social worker, and Tara Neidig, our secondary social worker. We have been talking to you about the 7 C's of resilience, and as presented by Dr. Ginsberg in this book, Building Resilience in Children and Teens. Last week, we were focused on contribution and how our kids can really develop a sense of self and work to build resiliency through contributing. This week, our focus is really going to be on getting rid of stress and coping, which I know we could probably all benefit from right now. So just to start off with how he starts this section. Resilience requires a wide repertoire of skills to cope with stress and challenge. Here's the bottom line, folks. Life is stressful. We need to prepare children to handle it effectively. They need to become competent at coping if they are to be resilient.
Yep.
Yep.
Too bad we waited this week to do this one. Pretty important.
Well, if you go further, he says, stress makes us feel terribly uncomfortable. We feel nervous, unsafe, insecure, ungrounded. We can't think clearly. We become restless. We lose sleep. We become tired. We might get headaches. Our muscles ache, our bellies feel bloated, and our hearts throb. We grow irritable, less patient, and much less understanding of others. And I'm certain that nobody has felt that way over the past 2 months at all, let alone just in life. But the thing is, as adults, we recognize that those can be signs of stress. And for our kids, they don't really always understand where those feelings are coming from.
Yeah. It's unpleasant, but necessary.
That's right. Because as we talked about in our first week of this podcast, stress is a life-saving function that our body has, right? Stress can tell us, hey, danger ahead, you need to react. But when our upstairs brain is less engaged and our downstairs brain is taking over, we can let that stress push us into more of a fight, flight, freeze type of response. And so in this section, he does go into talking a little bit more about problem-focused and emotion-focused strategies. So Beth, what do you think about his kind of differentiation of those two?
Well, I'll tell you, it's hard for me to get past that section. I read it and reread it, and I imagined my own reactions and responses just to the stress of our current situation. And I liken it to one of the Brene Brown episodes in Unlocking Us that she did about you. I love her. But she talks about people that during stress tend to overfunction or underfunction. And when I read his take on problem focus versus emotion focus, the way I thought of it in myself is that when I perceive stress, I immediately go to the analytical side. That would be problem focused. I try to slice it and dice it and make either make some plans around it or try to find answers or solutions to it. And because I have lived as a worrier for so long, I'm pretty efficient in getting through the problem focused thing. And what I recognized that happens in me is that after that I have my plan or whatever it is around the problem, I become impatient to have it resolved. Because when you're problem focused, you're focused on the solution. But if something is happening like what we're in right now, and it doesn't, even though I may know what the solution is, it can't happen in the timeline that I am needing it to happen. So I become impatient. And when I become impatient, I start to switch my stress reaction to emotion focus. And I do those things that just make my body feel better. So I can't believe I'm good at this. If there are people around the world that don't know me, please don't judge. Last week, it wasn't stress like a ferocious tiger coming at me. It was just a lot of stuff that I was juggling. I felt like I had a lot of balls in the air. And in the midst of this, bye, Tara. In the middle of this afternoon, I went to the cupboard and grabbed a tablespoon full of chunky peanut butter and just sat and ate it like a sucker because at that moment I had gone through all of the things to deal with the solution or the problem, but I began to react from an emotion focus. All was that I had a feeling in my stomach area where a lot of my anxiety goes that I wanted to get rid of, and so I grabbed the peanut butter and ate it. And it was like a light bulb went on when he read it, because I just figured I often do that without even really thinking about it because I see myself as problem focused.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I switched it and if I was a person who primarily was emotion focused, what would that look like? It could look like, and I thought about this today when I was rereading this. My mom took a lot of naps when I was younger. I just thought everybody's mom napped at 3:00 every day. And what I realized is my mom was battling an ulcer that was somewhat medically related, but it was also exacerbated by the level of anxiety that she lived under. So my mom, I believe, approached stress from an emotion focus.
Mm-hmm.
And what I saw in that is she escaped. She would do a lot of, so there are adaptive parts, which we'll talk about later, that are emotion focused solutions, but there are also maladaptive things that we can do.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought a lot about that stairway when we're on the landing. If we're aware of one or the other, then we can pick a strategy that calms us based on what our primary focus is.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Well, I like how, I was similar. I reread that section a couple of different times to really try and make sure I understood it. And what I liked was the fact that he said that neither of those ways to focus on that, neither one of them are wrong or incorrect. It's just kind of what you do with it and what strategy you use. And I liked how he then kind of broke it down into, and he even gives a visual, but kind of figuring out what your style is, but then knowing, okay, depending on my style, am I using a positive coping strategy or a negative coping strategy? And that, positive coping strategies don't always work exactly how we want them to, and negative coping strategies don't always work exactly how we want them to, or they do work.
Right.
Or they work for the time being, and you get that immediate gratification that you're looking for. Like, I bet your stomach felt really good after that chunky peanut butter. But, then did that actually give you it might have been the release in the moment, but did it give you the relief for that stress to actually go versus just be hidden for a while?
And I think that's real important. We see, we talk about getting the stress out of our body a little bit, and those coping strategies are quick and they give you that immediate, I feel better, but the stress does come back over time because you haven't really gotten rid of it. You just changed your, it changed how effective it was on you in that moment, right? I got that immediate feel better, but so the immediate gratification doesn't really play out over time. And we talked about that too earlier in one of our other C's, how we really have to teach our kids to delay some of that gratification. And that makes so much sense to me for a lot of reasons. But now as we're talking about coping too, to know that I will feel better if I do these things, but I might not feel better right now in this moment. But I am choosing more positive coping strategies that will have a lasting effect. Yeah.
You know what? I know we're going to get into talking kind of his sort of steps, not steps. They aren't steps. They're not chronological, but the different things that we can do. But I think that we really need to mention that, and we've talked about it, but this is a good chapter to mention it the most. That as school professionals, we see such an increase in the number of kids that are presenting with some pretty significant anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it's important to get to the root of what causes that. But I think that remembering that we can equip toolboxes with strategies that we give kids while they're in the discovery process for what is creating the bigger sort of, whether it's neurological or biochemical or situational, while they're in that process of revealing that, to have tools to be able to get that immediate sort of release or relief with breathing or being present and not letting the worry monster get the best of your thinking. He weaves through here a lot the self-defeating inner talk that we have, and I mean, obviously, as psychologists and social workers, that's sort of like a cartoon about us, oh, your inner voice, your self-talk, but it's a real thing, and it can undermine those solutions so easily if you're not aware that it is, for whatever reason, trying to undermine and make it so you don't experience that relief. And so anyway, toolboxes I feel like this chapter was sort of like the innards of a toolbox.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I think, the next thing we can really talk through is his take action steps. But first, I want to just say that, why is it so important that we talk through this? We've been talking about resiliency. He focuses on that resilient children are able to address problems competently and manage the physical and emotional discomfort that stress creates. They also need to feel comfortable withdrawing from or avoiding problems so that they can conserve energy to address those problems they are prepared to change or solve. I think it's real important to know that, and that's one of the strategies that we'll talk about too, is when you should avoid and when you should get in it. So, he also talks about you got to be in that right mindset. We first have to identify the problem. What is, he talks about, is this a paper tiger or a real tiger? And Mallory, you kind of talk about it differently with the younger kids too, about the size of the problem.
Yep.
And Tara, that's kind of the consistent vocabulary across the age groups.
Sure, and you get into when they're a little bit older, is this something you can control or something you can't control? Do you get to make this decision, or is this a decision that your parents makes or your teacher makes or whatever else? So it's the same concept, but a little bit different for the older kids.
Sure. Yeah.
And I liked how he kind of took it another step further on how not only big deal, little deal. I do a lot of that, like the size of the problem, but also is it going to matter? I don't do this a lot with my elementary age students, just because that's a really hard concept for them to kind of grasp that future self. But is it going to matter next year, in a week, in an hour? And I thought, as I was reading it, for me, that kind of stuck with me too. Like I can usually pretty easily just identify whether it's a real tiger or a paper tiger, but that whole is it really that important?
Right.
Is it going to? Yeah, it's a hard one.
It's hard for the kids to get, especially the middle schoolers. Mm-hmm. Easier with the high school to be able to say, okay, let's think about, it's Thursday. By Monday, is anybody going to even remember what's happened? What things are going to happen over the weekend that people are talking about on Monday? With the middle school, they just feel like it's forever, so it's a little bit harder to get that. But then, they do get there when they come back Monday and things aren't still falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
For them to grasp that concept of, time and how long it's going to really impact them, the way they feel in that moment.
And that takes me back to our talk around the competency, right? With the P, competency, when we talked about, can they experience a setback and recover? And I think, as you said, for middle school kids, Tara, that's really all they focus on, and it's always going to be there, and it's going to be this big, huge thing. I didn't make the team. I failed that test. I, missed this event. But in the end, the next day, there's other news and other things, and our kiddos realize, okay, I survived that. I can keep going, and now I have this failed experience under my belt that I know that I can come back from, and nobody really, is changing how they feel about me. So I think that's good. You can see how it all is interwoven to really work on this lasting skill of resiliency that we are all continuing to build. So the most exciting part. Oh, go ahead.
Can I ask a question? I'm curious, and when I think of adolescence, sometimes I think, one of the things within those things to avoid, avoid stress when possible. I think sometimes with adolescents, both boys and girls, there is there's a little, we call it a crisis junkie. They're kind of looking for that physical reaction to something that's heightened. And how do we balance? It's harder to impress on a kiddo who's maybe responding negatively to that stressor, but who also craves that kind of acceleration in those feelings that happen when there is a conflict or when there's stress.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know we don't have the answer to that, but I'm just curious, how do we bridge that? I would think for parents that, that becomes a really tight rope that you sort of walk.
Yeah.
That's a loaded question. Yeah.
But carry on.
I think, I mean, to me, that's more like it. We've talked about it. It's kind of that it keeps you in that downstairs brain, right? So you're always feeling, always like moving at a faster rate. And, one of my favorite books, Present Over Perfect, talks about how we run from our emotions, right? And we want to move fast and fast so we don't have to come to terms with what's really right there in front of us. So it makes me wonder if those crisis junkies or, the kids that are really motivated through that chaos is it because they think they feel better in that situation than if they pause long enough to really truly identify what are the stressors that are in their way, because that might be more challenging for them to kind of deal with and cope with because they don't have the coping skills yet, than to stay in that heightened state of challenge, if you will. I don't know.
Yeah.
But to me, that would be a depiction of someone who doesn't have good coping skills developed yet.
Yes.
That was maybe my add-on to that, is that, not only is it uncomfortable to maybe dive into that, but if you don't have those tools, or you don't know how to access those tools, is maybe a better, because what he talks about is very doable. All the things, that's what I think so great. But if you don't know how to access those, or it's unfamiliar and new territory, then it's easier to just stay in that heightened state.
It's like the negative strategies that keep going back into his little box of negative strategy, a little bit relief, and back to stress. And then negative strategy, a little bit of relief, and back to stress. So,
well, you got to kind of wonder too, since a lot of these strategies are things he said that are most effectively given to kids through modeling.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when they see their parents utilizing those. So the same could be said if we as adults are not aware of both how we cope with stress and what some strategies are to bring us back to the landing or
Yeah.
the way up, then it becomes difficult to be modeling, even trying different things that different demands or different stressors demand different responses. So
Well, and I think as he goes through here, so he has 10, what does he call them? I want to tell you a 10-part stress reduction plan. And each one of these seem to be about, taking care of your mind, taking care of your body, and how they come together to really help you reduce stress. So we thought we would spend the rest of our time today just going through each one of these 10 action steps that we can do to get rid of stress or to cope with the stress that we have. So the first one he talks about, and we kind of already alluded to this, but identify and then address the problem.
I want to kind of give a disclaimer too, because I thought this was I don't remember exactly at what point in the section he says this, but I love when he said, I'm giving you lots of examples, or I'm giving you lots of ideas, and I don't expect anybody to do all of them or memorize all of them. And I loved it when, I can't remember, it's right on this page. It says, don't stress about the stress plan. That is so perfect. Like, stressing about, all the things, and am I breathing? Did I do my yoga? Am I, eating well? Did I exercise? All those things, he's like, don't stress about the stress plan. So as we talk about all of these 10, and you're listening to it, think about kind of pick a couple and, maybe jot a note down and say like, maybe I'll try that. Or maybe this would work well for my child because they're really into X, Y, Z. So that was kind of my disclaimer that I wanted to make because I highlighted that and I loved it. With my Google Meets with my students has been an uphill week or downhill week and helping them kind of identify what that was. And he actually talked about the mountains. Is this the part where he talked about the shovels? Did anyone, or is that a different paragraph?
Yes.
That
section.
Okay.
When you think about a mountain as just little hills build up on each other, it makes it a lot easier to climb the mountain.
Yes, and it went with the analogy that I've been using with a couple of my students as far as like, okay, it's today. You might have an uphill kind of day for e-learning, and tomorrow might be a downhill kind of day, or it might be an uphill week. But I loved it. And I can't wait to share that kind of analogy of all right, what's your shovel then? You're going to need to get this shovel out to kind of dig your way through, or,
Yeah, that's good.
I loved that too. Identifying the problem. Is the problem that it's an uphill week? Is it an uphill hour? Is it an uphill assignment? And where are your downhill slopes? Where do you get to just kind of? So anyway, that was another one that I liked.
That's good. And I think when he talks about avoiding stress when possible, the question that he tells us to ask ourselves is, what brings me down? What always gets to me? How do I avoid those situations if I can, right? They're not always avoidable, but we don't have to put ourselves into positions over and over again that we know don't make us feel right within ourselves, right?
Yeah. I talk that same thing with the older kids about pick your battles. Is this something that you really want to deal with today, or is it not that important to deal with today? And I kind of kept thinking when he was talking about avoiding it when possible and knowing what causes you the stress, so you can decide if on that day, if you're having a good day and one of your stressors is staring you in the face, you may be able to walk through it. If you're having a bad day and that same stressor comes up, you may need to say, I'm out of here. I'm walking this way. And just knowing what those stressors are helps in that process.
Tara, that is that almost deserves a repeat, because I think that our tendency, adults and kids alike, is that we don't identify that we're having a hard day, and that certain things that we think we've got by the tail uh, on those days that we're feeling particularly confident and competent, can end up smacking us in the face, if we aren't aware of that. And is the example even around, um, issues of addiction or dangerous kinds of behaviors, identifying kids and circumstances that put you at a disadvantage to potentially re-engage in those dangerous or unhealthy behaviors. So I think that's a really, really important point is being able to take that thermometer is all like that temperature of where you're at with your stress and what kind of a day it is.
A check in with yourself.
Yeah. Number 3 he talks about is just let some things go. Right. And I feel like we've kind of talked a little bit about that, but I love he just brings in the serenity prayer, right?
Yeah.
The serenity prayer got me through my 30s.
So I maybe need to plaster it all over. I worked at middle school at my previous district, and without getting into too much of it, we focused a lot on a tool called the mood meter, and one of the moods or feelings that are on that mood meter, it's right smack in the middle, is apathy. And it does fit more into that unpleasant, but as I was reading through this, being apathetic to something is really just not giving it the energy or the kind of the thought or the care. And obviously we don't want to be apathetic humans to all things, but as I was reading that number 3, let it go, I was working a lot with my middle schoolers on can we give this no energy? Is this a situation that we can just be apathetic to? You don't have to like it, you don't have to go to here, can we just give it nothing? And so as I was reading through that, I like that too, kind of serenity is great, but I also like the idea of just nope, I'm just gonna let this one go. I'm not gonna give it my time.
Yeah.
Gosh, I love that too, because we often associate apathy in a negative way, like, oh, you don't want to be apathetic,
right?
Because that is, negative and you're not taking some kind of responsibility. But that's really not the word. Apathy just means to not engage in the brokenness of it, in the chaos of it.
Right.
That's what you're talking about. That just makes me think I'm taking a pass on this one.
Yeah. No, I like that. Rain check.
I choose to pass.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great stuff.
Nuggets,
good stuff. So number 4, he says, contribute to the world. When we contribute to our communities or attempt to repair the world in a small way, it helps us put aside our own troubles, our own stress. If we focus more on others in that moment than ourselves, sometimes our stress for whatever was right there in front of us dissipates because we've given our attention and our energy for good, for the sake of other people. And I love that too, because it fits so nicely into what we were just talking about last week with how that contribution piece is so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Taking care of your body. He starts number 5 with the power of exercise.
I really liked how he brought back the analogy that he used previously with with kind of one of the first humans. I think he names him Sam. But I'm not sure where I chose Sam, but Sam. Yeah, nope, he went with Sam. And how that we have those physical responses to stress, that fight, flight, or freeze, and in our body, it's our body saying move, and that it's that innate need to move to get out of danger or to relieve the stressor, get away from the stressor. And so, and I love the fact that he kind of touches on got to get your body moving so it has a place to go, because if not, that stress hormone just keeps recirculating, and your body's confused because it's not going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I've known, I'm an adult, I know what exercise can do, but even just rereading that again for him to say, like, your body needs to move because it's got to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Like, okay, that makes sense to me.
Well, and even through this, the stay-at-home situation that we're in, when we joke about our government-regulated walks. So, okay, it's time to go out on our government-regulated walk. But we need to get out of the house. We need to walk. We need to move our bodies. We need a change of scenery. We need just to feel better in our own body by moving, exercising. There's a great book that came out a few years ago too called Spark, The Revolutionary New Science of Exercise and the Brain. What a great book that really just talks about if you have kids that are struggling with attention and focus or hyperactivity issues, the connectedness of moving their body, like through things that involved crossing the midline, so using their whole body in different ways, really helps to engage their focus and start to rewire some of the neurology of their brain. I love how things like martial arts, swimming, those things that our kids can become really passionate about, also help deal with some of the challenges that cause them stress too. So it's a win-win.
Yeah. What's that book? He doesn't talk about it in here.
He does, yeah. Spark, it's called.
There it is. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, John Ratey, Ratey, Spark.
Yep.
So then number 6 is active relaxation. How can you be active and relax?
Yeah.
This is one that I would love to do, that I'd love to, on a personal level, explore a little bit further. I have a professor who I still am close with, and from AU, where I went to and got my where I went to grad school. But she has really focused her research and her attention on mindfulness, and the things that she has posted and the books that she has shared. And I've started a few. I'd like to say finished, but that would be a lie. But I think just he talks about guided meditation and mindfulness, and that being able to kind of switch our brain from the voluntary responses and really focus on those involuntary responses and how we can start to control those. And I thought that was really cool too. We can slow down our heart rate, even though our heart is, we don't make it beat. Thank goodness, I'd forget. But that we can, through that active relaxation, we can calm those parts of our body down.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I would love to do a little bit more exploration in the mindfulness piece and the guided meditation, because
yeah. And I think he talks about visualizing and yoga. So all of these, I think it's being more kind of intentional, yet moving in a way that calms your body.
Yeah. I think that maybe I'm showing my age, but I think that those practices have sort of gotten a bad rep, where they're thought of as more like sort of hippie, alternative, whatever. And it's the science behind them that is just really fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys have seen the exhibit at the Museum of Science and Industry, where it's an interactive exhibit, and you sit 2 people on either end of a table, and you're moving. Is it a ball?
Yeah, a ball in the middle.
And it literally, you're moving it. I've done it. It's not the table wobbling, but it is a little glimpse into changing your brainwave pattern. So the mindfulness stuff works on that, and it's not trying to get to a higher consciousness level to, see nirvana, which is often where we go when we think, um, of the words that are associated
Right.
with that. I will say the very first time I ever did therapy, it was 1987, I think. And the person gave me several books to read, and one of them was it was called The Meditation of Mindfulness by Thich Nhat Hanh, and I didn't read it because I was like, I'm not some hippie that's gonna. Well, now the work that Thich Nhat Hanh, I don't know whether his last name is Thich or not, but anyway, the work from that book has they've worked into science where they're using the exercises and the activities in the research. So it really should have paid closer attention in '87. But
and there's tons of apps out there now. I think Beth, you and I were even just talking, was it Calm that we were, and then like I know Mind Up. There's tons out there. If you just start, mindfulness is having its moment for sure.
It is. It is.
A lot of stuff on it, but I love too that you can't be. He basically says you can't be stressed and tense and relaxed at the same time. So if you can get to that place of active relaxation, your body's going to have to get rid of that stress.
Yeah, it forces it. So then the next thing is my favorite thing: eat well. And he talks about how, and we've all know this and we've heard this, but there are certain foods too that can increase our cortisol levels and make our stress feel more elevated. There are certain other foods that really help us decrease some of that anxious state or emotional state just naturally with what they put into our bodies. He really talked about helping kids distinguish between healthy and unhealthy snacks by soap and no soap. And I really like that.
Yeah.
When I'm done eating the snack, do I need soap to wash my hands or no soap to wash my hands? And if I need soap, it's probably not a healthy snack. So I really thought that was a great way to, present that for young people. But he talks too about, overeating and our stress eating and just even what we eat in our society right now with I always love it. I'm at Dunkin' Donuts, you guys know me. So I'll go and they'll be like, well, you can, or it's 2 to 4 is the iced coffee happy hour. Any size, $1.29. So I'll order a small iced coffee. Don't you want a large? No, I don't want a large. It's the same price. I know it's the same price. I don't A, need all the caffeine, or B, the sugar, but we live in an upsize it kind of world. And, so he talks just about being conscientious of that too. And what do we really need to be putting into our bodies?
We went through a fast food restaurant just last night, and we didn't actually order the large, and we were just given the large drink. And I looked at Matt and I was like, did you say large? And so now we both had 2 large sodas that, we consumed.
Because it was there.
And probably definitely didn't need all of that. But yeah, there's even to the point where they don't even ask because a large drink is actually cheaper
than
the smaller size. So
right.
Anyway.
And also he talks about how to just make mealtime more of a relaxing, like family gathering, if you will, an activity versus just, eating as quickly as we can eat and running off. So,
and that is hard. Maybe less so right now during this, quarantine, but it's hard. I know growing up for me, I did soccer, I danced. Sometimes we were involved in community theater, depending, and I remember Madeline and I, we were a cereal dinner family often.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a fend for yourself, eat when you can find the time. If I was going to be home during this time before I had dance on whatever night it was, and Madeline was going to be home from this time to this time, we ate when we could.
Right.
And sometimes it was a home cooked meal, Mom, if you're watching. It was a home cooked meal, but it was very rarely the 4 of us sitting together And not because we, we're super dysfunctional. We just were very, very busy.
Right.
And
right.
go. And so I think being mindful.
And I think that's okay. It doesn't have to be every dinner every night, but bringing that place of, just breaking bread, being in community, being connected during that time.
Yeah.
I don't say this to be like, this is what everybody should do, but we had, when the kids were younger and we were busy, but they weren't as busy, we had dinner pretty much the same time every night. So we had developed a pattern that felt good to them. They knew that it was a time they could, catch up and they ate too fast, but it didn't last a long time, but it was a regular part of our routine. So that then when we went into the busy years, it was something they sought out. So it became, if they were feeling really overwhelmed, they might say, could we barbecue on this night? And so we would make a plan to have, dad's, famous whatever on Saturday night before they went out or something. But
Right.
they didn't get to seek that out. And now, as adults, that's their favorite time when we're back, because that's far away. So when we're back together, I mean, meals can end up being hours because we eat a little, but then we just talk, and then it morphs into a game. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that earlier on they saw that as a time of connection.
Yeah, and de-stress, right? De-stress. I feel better when I'm sitting here at this table talking with my family.
Yeah.
So the next thing he suggests, number 8, is eat or sleep well. Sleep well. Tara, I know that you really liked reading about the sleep.
Yeah, this was one of my favorite ones, just because, trying to explain to kids the importance of getting, a good amount of sleep and why and everything. And he talks about just making a routine. And, bedtime is 0 time. And then 6 hours before that, T-minus 6 hours,
I love that.
At that point, you try to do the same thing each night so that it gets you in that routine. That I really liked about his sleep discussion was to make your bed sacred. And I think my teenagers, when they were little, it was a little bit different, but my teenagers have a real hard time with that. They talk on the phone in bed. They do their homework on their bed. They have desks. They have, but that's what they choose. And so if they're stressed about school or stressed about whatever else, they aren't escaping it when they go to bed.
Right.
That's a really important thing to think about when you are stressed.
That's such a nice physical boundary.
Yes. And so then it feels like, I don't take that to bed with me then. I work at my kitchen table rather than sitting on my bed, then I don't take that stress. It doesn't feel stressful when I get in bed because I just did my homework here. And I thought that was just a great thing that he talked about. But I think it's super important to have those routines and do the same thing each night to make sure that when it's bedtime, your body's ready.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think, Mallory, you and I were talking the other day about the just the increase in screen time. And I think I had this conversation too with you, Beth, about how we're on the screens so much with the student learning right now. Our meetings are virtual. Our kids are on screens. We use screens for connection as well as work or school. And then we use screens for some of our relaxation and our instant vacations that we'll talk about next. So those, just the constant barrage, if you will, of busyness that's coming through the multiple screens that we use has really shifted my sleep cycle. I think I reach points where I am exhausted, but then I get this second or third wind and I am up and can't really fall asleep. And then once I fall asleep, I'm not staying asleep well. And the importance of sleep, it doesn't matter if you're an infant or you're 87 years old. I think that the lack of sleep causes our stress to become just hugely magnified and our coping skills to be decreased. And our downstairs brain really does come into action when we are sleep deprived. So important.
Yeah.
So important.
Yeah.
And then instant vacations. Instant vacations, he talks about, like, just, it doesn't have to be getting up and physically going someplace, right? He talks about reading a book, getting lost in a book, visualizing, kind of daydreaming. What are our hobbies? What do we enjoy? How do we find those moments to get away when we're not really able to go sit at the beach? And I was thinking about where we are in our world right now and how important this is too, to be able to say, taking a little mini vacation right here inside my house.
Well, and the thing that strikes me when you say that is, and I'm sure people everywhere have had this conversation. Our homes were our sanctuary.
Mm-hmm.
So in some respects, we would go to work and then we would go on a little, at least for me, because my commute is so long that I felt like I was at home so little that it was just this like, oh, I'm home, yay. And then the weekend was a little bit longer vacation. Well, now I have to work and seek that in the same place. And it's taught me that you have to honor that. I mean, you have to make a decision to step away.
Mm-hmm.
That it no longer is bound by, gosh, I can't stay at work that late because my husband would, be disappointed and sad that I wasn't home. Now it's, you have to stop working because you need to step away. And I think I want to say that our district has at least provided, I think, a healthier framework for that during this period of time, where we have not been a district that's tried to recreate the entire school day within the day for kids. But imagine those kids who are having to do school in their sanctuary, in their instant vacation.
Yeah.
So I hope that, since this isn't going anywhere anytime soon, that we're all practicing, we all, not the four of us only, but practicing how to do that and stay at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
When he was talking about this too, to kind of go back to a in school and with their kids mindset, kids are stressed during their school day, and they can't always go into a visualization in the middle of social studies, or whatever the subject may be, because then you're going to miss some stuff. But I talked a lot last year, again, to some of my middle school students, kind of about, we call them joy islands. And can you identify throughout your day, what are your joy islands, and when do you get to them? Is it nap with Mr. So-and-so, or is it the lunch hour and being able to see your friends during your lunch hour? Is it that 15 minutes of after you're done with lunch and you get to go outside in the patio area? I don't remember what they called it, but what were those joy islands? And I as I read through this instant vacation, I thought of that. Like, can you get to, because you need to be on, and it may be stressful for you to be on during your morning or your afternoon, but if you can make it to these, if you can identify those and get to that place for your stress relief, those can be like your little vacations throughout within your day.
Yeah.
But it made me think of that as I was reading it.
Good example of how adults can model for kids and saying it. You know what? Right now, Mom needs to go to her happy place.
Yes.
Because if I don't, we all are going to be in vacation nightmare.
Yep.
Yeah. But so that they know and see how you do that.
And that's so important, that modeling piece. And he does talk about that too, of talking it out and modeling that. Wow, it's been a really long day. I just need to take about 10 minutes to myself. So I can, get back into the right mindset. Or, man, that's a really big work assignment. I don't know how I'm going to get that done, but I think if I just reread it and break it into smaller parts, I'll be able to handle that and get it done on time. So he really emphasizes the importance of talking about that, talking through that in front of our kids, because that's how they'll learn. That's how they'll pick up on it. I know we're going long today, but I feel like these are just so important. The last one he talks about is releasing that emotional tension in all the ways that we can do that. He talks about laughing, how laughter is such a stress reducer and getting that out of our bodies. Crying can be. Getting it out through list making. Write it down, get it out of our head. Talked about boxes, Tara. Do you want to talk through the compartmentalizing and with the box?
I missed you. What did you say, Beth? And then
I was saying for those problem focused solvers, the list making versus emotion focused, where the breaking down and just crying it out. The only way.
And I think, what did you say about the box, Jessica?
Well, I know Tara really liked, she had some thoughts around the closed box versus the clear box.
Yeah, he talked about, kind of back to identifying your stressors and knowing what they are. And if your box is clear, then you can see all those things once you have identified what stresses you out and put them in that clear box. And there's going to be times where you're going to have to pull one out again to work through it or whatever. But if it's in a closed box and you don't talk about it or you don't identify what those are, it makes everything can be stressful then.
Yeah.
It's important. You can put it in that clear box and pull it out and deal with it when you need to. You still know it's there. You're still recognizing, yep, that thing stresses me out every time I see it, but you're able to see it and pull it out and put it away for a while. I thought that was just so powerful that it was a clear box rather than a solid box where you don't really look at it or ever want to see it until it hits you in the face.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. That does. It kind of reminds me of the. I've heard it a couple times where somebody does the physical motion of hanging up their baggage, for lack of better words, but their baggage, before they walk in the door of their house, or vice versa for some of our students who maybe have a lot going on at home, and coming to school is that place that they don't have to carry that, that put it in your clear box, almost like compartmentalizing it, but still being able to know it's there and seeing it.
Right.
There. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Yeah. I think his final thought here is that children can be helped to cope with stress and somehow get past it, but there's nothing that can make them immune to stress or make stress completely disappear. Everyone has times when they feel that they simply can't take any more. So these 10 things aren't going to make your life stressless, but it certainly will help all of us develop continued resiliency and coping strategies that when we are presented with stress, we can get through it a little easier, and we'll have some ideas to pull from that toolbox idea. So good stuff this week. Next week, we're going to be talking about control. So really coming to the last part of our book and how control helps kids and adults, as we've said, develop some better sense of resilience. And again, in our world, there's so much that's out of our control right now. I look forward to hearing what you all have to say and reading where he's going. Those of you who are listening that like to join us for our live discussion, we will be talking about coping next Tuesday at 3:00. You can look below for the link. Yeah. Goodbye. Have a great week.